in a relaxed way as best you can. Let your eyes gently close. Let yourself relax. Go where you go when you go. Welcome back. I've got a couple of brief announcements. One is that you should visit our new website. We just had our website redone this last week, actually. And we have some really interesting features to that, and I hope you'll join us. And if you want to see this video again, it will be online on our website. If you go to the events drop down, and then there are 3 things under there, and the bottom one is videos. And after today, you can click on the videos and you'll be able to watch Suzanne again. And we will keep our online ones in that location. We also have about 80 videos now on YouTube. And on the website, you'll see a place where you can click to go to that site. And you can watch about 80 more videos if you haven't seen them. So those are all good to see. I wanted to mention just briefly that next week I will be talking for Spiritual Awakenings International. If you go to spiritualawakeningsinternational.org and go to their events page, well, you can right on the homepage, I'm there, you can't miss me. And the talk that I will be giving is about a guided life, how near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences have transformed my own life. My guides choose all of our speakers, and they have for the last 23 years, as well as setting up Chicago IANDS and now Spiritual Awakenings International. That came from, some of you might remember, about 10 years ago or less, my guides told me to start a new organization called IC, the International Society for Extraordinary Experiences. And that organization, when I got it all set up and I got it incorporated, and then my guide said, we're just getting ready. It's not time yet. It's too soon. And in December, when I met Dr. Yvonne Kaysan, when she came to speak for our group, when we were still having in-person meetings, she and I talked, and I told her I had this, and she was wanting to start an organization with the same goals, an organization that would address all kinds of spiritual phenomena. And so we just changed the name of IC to SEA, Spiritual Awakenings SEI, sorry, Spiritual Awakenings International. And now she is president of the new organization, and I'm on the board of it. So please join us next week. It'll be at 12 noon local time here in Chicago, 1 Eastern time. So I guess she's in Toronto. So and there was one other thing. Oh, I know what it is. Make sure that if you have any objections to being recorded, because this is going to be recorded, don't ask Suzanne any questions because it will be on the video. Sorry, that's the way it goes. Now, for what we all came, I'm so delighted that we have Suzanne coming today. She has an absolutely phenomenal record as a grief and bereavement healer, as well as a phenomenal psychic medium. So we are very, very excited to have her today. She had a near-death experience when she was a little girl, and she's always had these gifts. So we're going to find out more about how that evolved. And please welcome our guest speaker for today, Suzanne Northrup. Hi, Suzanne.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so just real quick here, Vicki, it says I'm supposed to cancel Spotlight video. Is that true or not?
No.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure that, you know, because it keeps showing up here. All right. So just kind of like quick here, just so that I kind of I like to let you know how I actually work, or actually the way I like to work pretty much structurally, which is how I would be doing this if I was with a live audience, which is that I would speak for, I don't know, whatever, 30, 40, something like that minutes and talk, whatever it is. Then we'll do a Q&A or whichever, however comes along the line here. And then I like to end with messages. Now, the way we're gonna kind of do this, the way that I've been doing this on the Zoom, because that's the new world here, is that somebody will, I guess on the right-hand side here, there's a chat thing, correct, Vicki? People will ask the questions, they'll give me their names, whatever it is.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You could specifically ask, you know, you could say like, I lost this person or that person, whatever it is, don't give me the specifics, and I'll go down, they'll tell me where I'm supposed to stop. And then I guess you're gonna try to highlight them, correct? So that we can have an interconnection going on?
Yes, we will have a gallery view at that point, and who's ever talking will come up and highlighted.
Right.
See.
And that is why Diane said that this is being recorded, because people that get messages want them recorded and other people want to hear them too, believe it or not. So we just have to have everybody's permission that if you are going to come on, you got to know that, I don't know how many people are here, but whoever they are, they're going to know about you and your dead family. So there you go. So that's sort of all the quick news here. Anyway, okay. So first of all, I have to be very clear here. Diane thinks I had a near-death experience as a child. I can't honestly tell you if I had a near-death experience as a child, but what I can tell you is this. When I was 5 years old, my parents were driving down the road and they said something to the effect about like, well, we should stop and get ice cream, which of course is one of my favorite things at 5 years old, which is many people's favorite things at 5 years old and later on in life. And so they pulled the car over. I was never great at the holding hand game because I was like, you know, like the big people could do that. I'm really fine doing this by myself. So I must have got out of the car. I'm assuming I got out of the car. I assumed one of my parents went to grab me, but it didn't make a difference because I was already on my way to the ice cream store. I assume I crossed the road, and in the process of crossing the road, I got hit by a Buick. Don't ask me what year the Buick was. I just know it had a particular kind of license plate, and that license plate apparently saved my life. So, I mean bumper. Anyway, apparently I flew down the street one way, my shoes and socks flew the other way. So that goes to show you how far I was knocked. And I came down, landed on the ground. And of course, I do vaguely remember my mother being somewhat hysterical in the car, and I was in the back seat of the car driving to the hospital, of which I only had bruises, no broken bones, no anything else, none of the above. So that's my vague memory of it. But what I can tell you is from as young as I remember, I knew what astrology was. Don't ask me what I knew what astrology was. I've never studied it, but I'm pretty darn good at reading a chart. I mean, obviously over the years, I've, whatever. And the other thing is that, and of course I didn't know this word at the time, is I was totally convinced at a very young age that I had lived before. There's no doubt in my mind that I had lived before. Reincarnation, of course, didn't come into my view until much later in my life, but I was pretty clear. But I sort of felt it wasn't honestly in a positive way, because I felt like why I was experiencing a lot of things that I was experiencing in my life, which of course you weren't really supposed to be experiencing whatever I was experiencing in my life. I kind of felt like I must have done something before that I'm knowing a lot of things that I shouldn't technically be knowing, because when you know things at such a young age, depending on, of course, your circumstances, it can be a little challenging. So I kind of like went through life. I was an only child until I was 9 years old, and I was raised in a rural town. It was actually a farm community, and I had the go of woods all the way around me, and that sort of became my friend. It was the woods, and in the woods I met a lot of people in the woods, and I would run with the horses in the woods. And of course, there was only me and the woods and the horses, whatever it was. And I kind of lived my life that way for a really long time. And like I said, I was an only child for a long time. And I didn't have, I had sort of like parents that, well, first of all, there was like not a lot of books in the house, and there was not a lot, there wasn't like any books in the house, and there was no religion stuff in the house, which probably on some way I benefited from it. But actually I was the only one in my family interested in going to church, which I did because I had a great love for music, and that was where the best music in the world was. And that was actually, quote unquote, that was sort of technically my background. Actually, that's what I thought I was going to grow up and do for a living. Obviously other people had different things in mind. So I went to the church, and like I said, it was all really about the music, but again, it wasn't really about religion. So like I said, I wasn't raised with religious background. I wasn't raised with super intellectual, educational kind of background. It was very much, hardcore, rural background, which I have to tell you that from people that I know, a lot of people that I know, peers of mine that were raised in much more structural background, particularly religious backgrounds, had a lot more conflict in doing this work than I have for that reason. I mean, I know there was a woman that I knew named Lillian Smith who lived in South Dakota, and her father was a Baptist minister. And she always told the story about how she would go down, and she was also an only child, and she'd go down to the river or go down to the pond, and she'd play with her best friend, this little young girl with her. And so one day her father, saw her doing this, and he came downstairs and he grabbed her and took her up to the church, turned her upside down to shake the devil out of her. And so she remembers vividly leaving the church, and she wasn't so upset about him doing the upside down devil thing. She was more upset that it was going to chase this little friend of hers away that she used to play with down by the river, by the pond. Well, anyway, fast forward, she went back down there, and her little friend was there with her. Later on in her life, very close to when she started becoming a medium, or when she started doing medium work, she got visited by this young girl to find out the young girl was a twin sister of hers who had died at birth. And of course, her parents never told her. I have 1,000 of these stories in the Naked City, as they say. So she had that sort of experience, and it was extremely traumatizing to this little girl, because clearly it would make sense why her dead twin sister would play with her, because they were going to develop this thing, and of which they did later on in life. She worked a lot with her sister. So that was sort of my 5 to kind of whatever things. And at the ripe age of 13, my paternal grandmother died. Now, again, this is kind of one of my Hollywood stories. So she was a major force in my life. She was quite amazing. I had 2 really amazing grandmothers, I must tell you, and I call them my pillars because I always feel them on each side of me. But anyway, they were both farmers on both sides of the family, but she started a real estate business, like out of the depression when everybody was looking to sell their farm. She'd knock on their doors and find a buyer for them. So she started this business from a very young age. So I was and I was the firstborn, and like I said, at 13, she got colon cancer, which is never a lot of fun. And she was this big woman. And the last time that I remembered seeing her vaguely in the hospital was right around that time. And when I saw her, she went from like whatever weight she was, probably down to about 80 pounds. And so what happened when she passed, which again, I can't tell you the framework of time, but I know I was at 13 because that's when the house sort of turned upside down. The night of her physical death, she came and visited me and stood at the bottom of my bed and said, I'm going to give you my ruby with a diamond in it. I can't visit you very often, but know that I'm always there. And I'm going to give you one of my favorite properties. So I said, that's really cool. Because I'm looking and I'm thinking like, oh, great. You know, the house is going to be normal again. Grandma's fine and everything is well. And we're all good. The next day or the day after, my mother proceeds to tell me that we're going to go to the parlor. Now, I didn't know what the parlor was. Okay. So she said, we're going to go to the parlor. And I said, okay, we'll go to the parlor. But, you know, my sisters are too young to go. So you're just going to go. So my mother and I and my father, we go to the parlor, and I look up at the front of the parlor, and there's this woman dressed in my grandmother's clothes. I'm really appalled. I'm really upset because Grandma and I just had this whole like big deal thing going on the night before. And next thing I know, there's this woman, I'm literally dressed in the same suits Grandma would always used to wear when she come to visit me, in this box. So I must have been saying something out loud, because my mother walks up to me and she says, you need to go sit in the car because you're going to like get your father upset. So I said, okay. So me and Grandma go and sit in the car. Now, remember, this was a small town. It was like one street. So by the time we ended up leaving there, my father must have drove 100 miles an hour through the streets. He wasn't an only child, but my grandmother left my grandfather when my father was young, and she had two older boys. The middle one died of actually tuberculosis, and one stayed with my grandfather on the farm. So it was just my father and my grandmother. So they were extremely tight, to say the least. Probably too tight, because when she died, he went off the deep end. My father did. And so the house was really literally turned upside down. So during that period of 13, which is not a fun age to begin with, and all the stuff that was going on, and me having to deal with, you know, literally helping raise my sisters and all this crazy stuff. What would happen is I would have these constant things of like seeing things that were going on, like, you know, Ricky down the road. I said one day when I'm coming from school, I go, shit, I don't know if I should be doing this. I cannot believe that this guy is going to go jump on one of the trains. Now, where I grew up, like jumping the trains was like kind of like a second activity for boys, really stupid activity, because if you slip, you could lose your legs. And that's what happened. So I remember seeing this happen, you know, to him on the way from school, and he happened to be, you know, a neighbor fairly close from us, and he did. He lost his legs by doing this. So I had a lot of these things that went on like all the time that, of course, I couldn't explain. And we have to understand, it's not like there was the time that I was raised, it's not like this was an encyclopedia and there wasn't a whole lot of books to do it, but it was just sort of like a natural thing for me. And people always ask me if I've ever been afraid of dead people, and I say, absolutely not. Living people, yes, not dead people, because dead people, like, you get it as you get it. Living people, they can say one thing and you know that they're lying, but that's just the way the world works. So I went through this pretty much through my, you know, my whole life. And at the ages, as soon as I could leave town, I did. I packed up my bags, $30 in my pocket, and moved to New York City. I'd never been to a city before, except for the big city in town that I was near, which was Elmira, which was as close as it got to it. And I went to New York City, and while I was in New York City, I got, for all you New York City folks here, I got a job at Sam Goody's record store, because I wanted to be as close to music as I could be. So I figured if I'm not doing it, then at least I'll be able to, you know, have the record store. So I left my band at home and I went to New York, and I got a job in Sam Goody's. And when people would come into the store, like this one time, this one guy came in, he had this really ugly shirt on. And I'm like saying, like, this dude is stealing records. I mean, like, this dude is like stealing records. So of course I go to the, you know, to the guy on the corner, I go like, listen, you know, whoever the manager was at the time. And I go like, this guy's like stealing records. And they look at me like I have 14 heads. And I go like, don't you understand he's stealing records? And of course they didn't believe me. And the guy walks out with the records. They didn't understand how come I knew it. And it was just like, Well, I wasn't even thinking about how I knew it. So this proceeded to happen. So this one person that I work with, I gathered later on in my life, she didn't like me because she said to me, I should go to Bellevue. And I said, okay, fine. You know, so I thought Bellevue was a school that you could go. This is how naive I was. I thought Bellevue was a school that you could go to maybe learn more about music. And maybe that's what you do when you move to New York. So I go to Bellevue and I get there and I realize it's at the time, of course, it's a crazy house. And I'm like really freaked out because like, why would this person like tell me to go there? And you have to understand, I like don't know what's going on here. I don't understand that. I mean, I know I'm different, but I'm not quite sure what that different is. So I go to Bellevue and then I come back and I ask, I said, Ruth, like, why did you like tell me to go to Bellevue? And she just kind of smiled. And, so the same person would come in and steal records and I would tell them with the ugly shirt that it would steal records. They didn't know how I knew. So I realized that at some point I should probably just learn to keep my mouth shut. So there must have been a one day that I must have been really off the wall because I came home and I was living with this guy, Kevin, at the time. And I told him what happened. And he goes like, you know what, I got to get you out of this town because they're going to lock you up. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. They're telling you to go to Bellevue. It's clearly that they don't understand your deal. And maybe we both don't understand your deal, but let me get you out of here. So what he said, he took me to California where he figures everybody is crazy. It's just after San Francisco. So that's what we did. We went to San Francisco. And at the time I had met a woman who was an actress at the time. And she was San Francisco, had moved back to San Francisco, and both her parents were shrinks. So I'm going to live with her. And then, I start talking to her mother. Well, again, I don't know what I said to her mother, but her mother sort of implied to her that I could probably use some kind of help. Quite not sure what that help was. So they recommended me going to somebody. Again, I'm trying to put all these pieces together. You have to understand, I'm putting all these pieces together. They didn't have words in those days like psychic and medium and all this. They just had like the you were touched. So she recommended me to go to this guy, and he's clearly convinced that I am psychotic, schizophrenic, whatever I am. And he puts me on a state program for it was called Aid to the Total Disabled. The program no longer exists, but they knew I wasn't, they knew I couldn't hurt anybody. It wasn't about me hurting anybody else or really not even hurting myself, although I did have some moments. So he put me on this program, the state program. And that's how I survived. Because it wasn't like a whole lot of things that I could sort of like do for a living. So I survived on this for a while. And then finally, what happened is that I knew something was different. And so I did what every normal person does. I moved to the country and lived without electricity and water for 3 years in an A-frame cabin and out in the middle of nowhere land and kind of figured it out. I mean, that was like how I kind of figured it out. I would, in those days, there were a lot of communes, and then in a lot of communes, there were a lot of people in these communes, and some of them, believe it or not, there were a lot of people from New York that were studying to be doctors and dropped out of medical school or dropped out of law school or whatever it is, and they went and lived on these communes because they had like large acres of land. So I got connected to a lot of these people, and of course, I don't even tell you there was a lot of hallucinogenic drugs going on at this time. And so I did this for like about 3 years, almost 3.5 years. And then finally I woke up one day, this is sort of a pattern in my life. I wake up and like, oh, you're going to go here, or, oh, you're going to go there, or you're going to move here, or you're going to move there. So they told me, for me, it was time for me to move to LA. If I was ever going to be a serious composer, then I really needed to, go to a city. At that point, Los Angeles was the closest city other than San Francisco, but I chose Los Angeles. Because I also had a friend that had moved there, and she knew some people and had some contacts. So I went to Los Angeles. Now, for those of you that have been around the spiritual world for a long time, you have to understand that any works that were done by mediums or healers or psychics and stuff like that, the only place you could do them was the spiritual churches, period. And then, of course, later on, psychic fairs came out. But in the 70s, there was only spiritual churches. So there was this place that was called the Masonic Temple. And this woman by the name of Trudy Jarno, sweetheart of anything, was from Austria, survived the camps as a very young girl, moved here, and she was like an okay psychic, but her whole thing was really like teaching other people to be this what it was. And she kind of wanted to take me under her wings. And I go, no, I just want to do music. I don't want to do this other stuff. And she goes, okay. And then, but she kept kind of like hounding me. Well, on Sundays, she would have different presenters. And so there's this one Sunday that she had a woman by the name of Betty Sittower come in. Now, again, what a lot of people don't know is that LA really is the city of angels. And they had a tremendous underground movement going on there in the 70s. And some of the most incredible people, Catherine Ponder, if you don't know her books, you should read them. She's an amazing woman. She was this little old lady from Pasadena. And she wrote the books even before he did about like success and all these tuned in things, you know, the mind and everything else. So I got to see her work. And then I got to see this woman, Betty Sittower, who was the first woman to have, actually, I think the first psychic to have a police department badge, of which she got from the LA Police Department. And she actually, anybody been around, there was an enormous case called the Hillside Strangler case in San Francisco, where there was these two brothers that were killing everybody and they couldn't catch them. Well, she actually was the one that caught them. But of course, they don't give psychics credit, the cops got credit. But that's, anyway. But I liked her because she was very down to earth. And I felt like, okay, I keep getting these messages that maybe I should just check this stuff out. And so I went and I studied with her. And when you studied in those days, and this is, and I know I may be dating myself, but it was a very, very different world because you were honored and you had ethics. And it was like, you don't walk into a room and sit with these people unless you keep your mouth shut and you know what you're doing. And you don't go out and you give people readings on you don't do this. It's just, you do not do it. And you are honored. You have to feel honored to be able to have these privilege to move into people's vibrations and permission. You don't walk up to somebody without permission. So she was strict. I mean, literally, she was like one of the, the old Catholic school teachers with the, the ruler on the hand. And so I became her, quote unquote, sort of star student. I was really the only one that was the medium in the class, but the class consisted of lawyers, doctors, tons of enforcement people, cops, sergeants. I mean, the captain of the LA Police Department in that time. These were all the people that were studying with Betty. And then there was me. And I can't say I was really secure at that time in my life, because she kept making me stand up and read and making me stand up and read. So I was forced from day one of doing this work to stand up and do demonstration, which they call it demonstration much more, really, believe it or not, in England than they really do in this country, although it's sort of changed a little bit. And so that was in the 70s. And I started doing readings. I did them for free for 3 years. And I couldn't relate to getting money for this at that time. And I wasn't ready to hang out my shingle, because I know when you hang out your shingle, it's very serious, because that was how I was trained. And so I woke up one morning again, and they said, "Oh, you're moving back to New York." And I go, "Like hell I am." And they go, "Oh no, you're moving back to New York." And I said, I left New York because I didn't want to be in the cold anymore. And I had already been living in California for 10 years. And they go, "Oh no, you will." Well, we always know who wins that story out. Within 6 months, I was back in New York. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life. Well, I can't say I totally made it. Of course I did the thing, but it was the little push. Prior to that time, I had moved. Well, actually, even when I got there, I had moved like every 2 years, pretty much, up until that period of my life. So I moved back to New York. I wrote my symphony during that time, which is now, by the way, you can get it on my new site. It's called Arcana, and I wrote music to tarot cards for any tarot card people out there. I can't imagine you not wanting to get it, but it's a symphonic ballet actually, and it's, like I said, it's a whole 21 thing of the major arcanas. And I have to say it's a piece I'm pretty proud of. I actually produced it with a 56-piece orchestra on my own, and I've now come out of the closet, and now people can come and listen to it. So while I was in New York, again, doing music, and I had been studying whatever it was, and there really wasn't a lot of things that I could make a living at. So I started, I had met this woman who had a psychic fair, and I went there and I said, I'm a medium and this is what I do. And she says, "Okay, it's always proved me you can do this." And I told her something like, you know, she should call her roommate or whatever it is, because her air conditioning may be falling out the window. Well, sure enough, she called her roommate, and it was like on the edge of the cliff. If you don't know New York City, when an air conditioner is on the edge of a cliff, it's really not a good thing. So she says, "You're hired." And she goes, "Can you lecture?" And I go, "Absolutely." Well, I'd really never lectured before in my life, but I was so used to doing demonstrations in front of people, and I'd had so much knowledge in metaphysics because I had studied everything with Betty for several years, that I said, "Sure, I can do it." And I did. And I got very well known, like very fast, because when you do media things in New York City, which is the media capital of the world, pretty much, you're going to get inundated. I was so inundated. I can't even tell you. I was on every radio show and every television show, and I lectured at the Anthropological Society. I lectured at the Law Bar Association. I mean, all these places you would never think that somebody doing what I do would lecture at. But there wasn't really anybody in the 80s in New York City doing it. I mean, that's really the truth. So that's what I did. And I just started doing this work, and I continued to do music. And it was like, when people asked what I did, I would say, like, I'm a composer, but this is how I was making my living. And my friends kept saying, like, you know, "Suzanne, you know, this is how you make your living. You're not making your living," you know. And it's like, I don't want to hear about it. That was sort of it took me a really long time to sort of come to terms with, because of the deal. And I was doing this work for 10 years, actually, before I wrote my first book, which came out in 1994, and I wrote it through actually through the beginning sort of the 90s, and sort of the rest is sort of like history. So I live in New York, if you haven't figured that one out, and I've been doing this work for 40 years, and I have never ever a day gone by, to be quite honest with you, I don't feel privileged and honored that I sort of stepped into this. And I did come to a point that, and I am talented, I am a very talented composer, but there are a lot of talented composers out there, but there wasn't a lot of talented people who did what I did. And so the choice was sort of like made for me. And that was sort of the deal, that I chose to sort of like do this. But like I said, I've never, ever been sorry that I've done it. I will tell you that when you do this and you get involved in with the media, it has its good points and it has some not great points. They can make you look great when you're pretty awful, and they can make you look pretty awful when you're pretty good. I'm probably the only medium that I know of, unless somebody else is out there that they don't know about it, that I had a television show for 2 years. It was based in Canada. They had no money, so there was no editing. So these clips are on my website. So it was all live. I mean, that was it. I had to do an entire season in 3 days, which is an episode of like 12 or 13 shows or something to that effect. And like I said, they said, "Look, well, we don't have any money to edit it, so you better know what you're doing." I said, "Okay." So that was my television show kind of sort of experience. But there's probably been a few shows that I haven't sort of been on. And like I said, I always was much more drawn to radio because my particular expertise is clairaudient. I'm a clairaudient medium. I'm also a traditional trance medium. And a lot of people don't know what that is either. But you'd have to go back into what I would say more of the past thing, or go be involved with metaphysics. And actually in England, there's a place called Arthur Findlay where they actually do teach mediumship, believe it or not. It's the only place in the world that I know that they do it. But a trance medium is somebody very similar to what Edgar Cayce did, except for he worked with a conscious control that asked him questions. Another known medium that, again, unless you've studied for a long time, a man by the name of Arthur Ford, who was the only medium that I know to speak in Carnegie Hall. He had an interesting life. And one of the things that seems to be a theme, again, with most of the mediums that I know, they either had very traumatizing childhoods, or they had something within their lives in terms of doing this work that was very traumatizing for them. And I'll give you 2 quick examples, because I don't know, to be honestly, I know the stuff is in Arthur Ford's books, but I'm not so sure if this was in Cayce's books, because this was sort of the things that I learned. And by the way, chronologically, Cayce was actually born before Arthur Ford. They're all born, obviously, of the late 1800s, and they sort of like crossed over with time. But like I said, Arthur Ford, actually Casey became much more famous than Arthur Ford as an American medium. Arthur Ford actually got his start he had to go to England, of which he was very, very connected to the British Society for Psychic Research. If you don't know what that is, it was started by the man of Arthur Conan Doyle. And if you don't know who Arthur Conan Doyle is, kids, you're living under a rock, because Arthur Conan Doyle was Sherlock Holmes. And this is also very common, people that have loss of children or traumatizing experience, like a lot of you guys out there had. What happens is that you go through certain things in your life. So he lost his son, his only son at the war, World War I. And one day he came home and his wife was sitting there talking to somebody, which of course he didn't see anybody. And we're talking, Sherlock Holmes, the detective. And he goes like, what are you doing? And who are you talking to? And she goes, well, I'm talking to Johnny. He goes, what do you mean you're talking to Johnny? Well, Johnny was her son. And she goes, well, I'm talking to Johnny. So being who he was, he went on a mission of research to find out if there really was mediums. At that time, mediumship the word was much more intuitive. Mediumship, I think, sort of came a little later. Parapsychology was during that time, though, which a lot of people don't know. Anyway, so he went on a research, and from that, he got very much involved with the British Society of Psychic Research. There's also one in the United States. It's called the American Society. It's based in New York. But if you ever go to London, in Parliament, where all the Parliament buildings are, right in the middle of them is this British Society for Psychic Research that he started, and it's still there. And I can't swear it, but I think when they did the movie here with Matt Damon, where they had the things in Japan, the tidal wave things, I think filmed some of it at the place, but they filmed it where somebody actually really was sort of a fraud. So it was kind of interesting because he played a guy that was a real medium and had a lot of issues with it. But anyway, so that's how that whole thing suffered. So the reason why I brought up Arthur Conan Doyle is because he sort of somewhat discovered Arthur Ford. And he discovered Arthur Ford through a man by the name of British Pike, who was a very well-known Brit bishop, and who'd also lost a son. And Arthur Ford actually connected with his son. So he got a lot of like media press sort of like during that time. And then later on, Arthur Ford also lost a son. So it's kind of like interesting, but he not only lost a son, but he was from Florida. He was also raised as a Baptist, and he was from Florida, and him and his sister, they drove back up north because he wanted to come back up to New York. I'm not quite sure the reason why. On the way there, they got in a very bad car accident. And I can't remember if she died or not, but he was hospitalized because he was in extremely bad shape. So I want you to pass this on to all your friends and that you know that are mediums, because I hope it doesn't happen to them. But anyway, the doctor found out what he could do. And once the doctor found out what he could do, what happened is that he was able to go into this trance. And so he started asking him all these questions about the stock market. The doctor did this. And the process of that, because he was in such pain, he kept giving him, narcotics, opium, whatever it is, to keep out of the pain. So he became a drug addict. And so he finally made his way back to New York. And I think he finally got off the drugs, and then he became an alcoholic. And he was pretty much on the streets. Somebody recognized him somewhere along the way. They were connected to AA, and then he finally got his life back together. So that was not a fun journey. The story that I talk about in relationship to Mr. Casey is that, again, you knew that he was a sleeping prophet, and he was a trance medium, but he was a trance medium, again, that didn't go into trance and spoke to you. He went into a deep sleep, and you had to have a person actually ask the questions. And you know that he had a 5th grade education, and he was incredible because he read the Bible every day, and he knew more things than most doctors do. So speaking of the doctors, apparently there was a group of doctors, I don't know, from New York or wherever it was, that felt what his, how could this guy like know all this stuff without any medical training, or even, more than a 5th grade education. So doctors do what doctors do. So they went and they started to have a session with him. He comes out of the session and he says to his wife, he said, it's the oddest thing. I don't understand why I got all these pain under my fingers. Well, when he went into trance, they put needles under his fingernails to see if he was really in a trance. Yeah, pretty intense, right? Yeah. So I'm just telling you that this has been some of the history of mediumship. This obviously doesn't go on now. People not question you and whatever it is, but people that have done this work from a long time ago and are literally the pioneers. I am quite literally, the pioneer in this sort of century somewhat. Went through a lot, but when you connect with spirit, which I know many of you out there know this, when you connect and you have this connection, no one's ever going to ever convince you otherwise. That if this is in your program and this is your path, your soul deal, that's what it is. You'll try to avoid it, but it will come and bite you in the rear end, because that's just the deal. And God knows, like I said, I was very, very talented, couldn't make a living, but the minute I put my shingle out, man, I've been working ever since. So obviously that was clearly my path. And like I said, honestly, I've never been sorry for that. But it's a journey, because you go through, I don't even think the making fun of, honestly, really ever bothered me, because I was never into the thing of that you can convince somebody of doing this, because you can't. It's in everybody's experience. It's like anybody there that's had a near-death experience, I'm sure many people have looked in and say, yeah, right. It's kind of one of those things. It's sort of like, I make the analogy that there was, 20 years ago, there's not a scientist or a doctor or anybody that would ever wanted to have anything to do with me. Now, you have, Eben Alexander, you have Mary Neal, you have all these people that had near-death experiences that they run to my show because they have a platform for a show where people are going to be respectful that they had these experiences, even though, even though Eben has become, very, very well known in this. Mary, not as much. She's had a much lower profile. But it's just sort of like you and again, if you're a scientist, and he's been, I'm sure, pretty exiled from the medical community. I have no doubt about it. But same with Brian Weiss. He forged it, and it's what it is. When you know you're supposed to do it, you just do it, and you honor it, and you bring it somewhere into the center of your life. And like I say, I always hope that people don't have any traumatic experiences with it, but many of them do. And it also goes back to the same thing in life, is that if you haven't experienced pain, or if you haven't experienced trauma, or you haven't experienced something like that, I've always believed that that's why artists write the greatest works of art, or the greatest books, or because somewhere along their line they've experienced something that they have a need to creatively put that out there in the world. And I would, no doubt in my mind, that every single organization, and at this point, there's thousands of parents that have written books about losing their children because it's cathartic for them. They need to do it. But I would assume, without assuming, that all you people that are wherever you are on my screen here, that have had a near-death experience, you can relate to this. You can understand what that was and what you went through and how traumatized you were when you were able to experience it or share it. And what better way to do that than the founding of an organization? And I think every organization that's ever existed in life was started for that reason. From MAD to wherever it goes, it had to do with somebody that had a traumatic experience. I was responsible for being the founder for the Association for Prevention of Suicide, because there was a couple that came to me in the 1980s that had their only son, take his own life. And the father was a psychiatrist. So you can just imagine the trauma it was for him, because he couldn't save his own son. He just jumped out the window. And so they started this organization, and it started in New York City. It's now, by the way, all the way across the country. And anybody that's gone through this, I certainly recommend, because they do phenomenal work. So because it was in New York, at the beginning, it got a lot of high profile. And one of the high profiles was Gloria Vanderbilt and Judy Collins, both well-known people. So I remember very vividly that there was an interview with Barbara Walters with Gloria, and she said to Gloria, she said, well, why you? Why your son? And I will never forget this. This is actually one of my favorite interviews of hers. Gloria looks at her, she goes like, well, why not? Like, because you have money or fame, or it exempts you. Nothing exempts anybody from a program that they're supposed to go through. Ask anybody who's ever lost a child, and they will tell you. Another thing I think is really interesting for people who have lost children, and this is not across the board, but I will tell you that there is a large proportion of them that will tell you that was the worst thing that ever happened to them in one way, and the best thing that ever happened to them in another way, because it really does, you know, separate the whatevers from the whatevers. And I have to say that that's one of the reasons feel very honored that I came from old school, because old school really prepares you for that. And this is not a parlor game, because you got people's hearts in your hand, literally in their hand, because they've put a lot into you. I remember at the beginning of my practice, there were a lot of people who would write letters with different names and different addresses and different everything, so I wouldn't know anything about it. And I respect that, because, you know, they went through a lot of trauma in their life, and the last thing they want to do is have, you know, somebody that doesn't know what they're doing open up their heart, because their heart's pretty raw anyway. So ethics have a very big play, needless to say, if I haven't made it clear, in my world. There is now a lot of mediums on a lot of different corners. I won't tell you whether they're good or bad, because I only really know those that I have a very small circle of mediums, and most ones I know are known. John Edward was my student, and I do a lot of work with Thomas John, and I've worked with John Holland. These are the people that I know, and like I said, there's a lot of upcoming, and I know with that, you're going to get a whole lot of good and a whole lot of maybe not. And it's interesting because, you know, everything we know in history kind of repeats itself. And during the period I was telling you about with Arthur Ford, by the way, when he was in New York City, also Mr. Houdini, if you remember him, was in New York City, and he was huge about debunking mediums. He kept saying, well, I can do everything that they can do. What was oddly interesting enough is that when he died, Arthur Ford was the one that contacted him with his wife, and they sort of had this kind of this code thing between the two of them. So that was kind of an interesting little, you know, tidbit in relationship to Mr. Ford and his past thing with Houdini, who, like I said, he went around New York City and did a whole, again, they were on every corner, and went around and did a whole thing and really did a lot of exposing of frauds, which is never a bad thing. If you can sort of stand on your own and do it, then, you know, more power to you in those situations, as I would say. But anyway, so that's kind of, you know, my story, and that's kind of, and when I tell my story, and I'd always, I like to talk a little bit about how the history of mediumship, the Psychosocial Society for Research, Social Research, is the oldest. It was 1884, oldest and only really beginning institute of its time, and it's been 184 years or something like that. So and by this time, but you know, all these people, by the way, I was telling you about, there's, you know, Blavatsky and Annie Besant and Leadbeater. These are all traditionalists, and they wrote these books that you know, they were like, some of them were like that, the esoterics of astrology, the esoterics of healing, and they're deep stuff. I mean, they're not like, you can't kind of read them and go to bed. You have to kind of like read them in sort of like stages. And of course, there was other ones, very, very different than the books that are written by mediums now. Sort of mine, sort of included in all that. But like I say, there's always been this path, and I would be remiss in saying that there's probably some stuff connected to near-death experiences with some of the traditional theosophists as well, because they put near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and astral projection experiences, because they're all out of what we call out of our physical body experiences. And as we all know, that they happen naturally. Of course, when we sleep, it happens sort of like naturally, and that's why it's a great access to our shutting down our left brain, because that's kind of the deal with that one. But anyway, so I would like to at this time, well, I want to do this in two parts, but and I don't know if this is going to be Vicki or Diane, whoever's going to be, but those who want to ask questions, like questions about mediumship, not messages, because I'm going to do that afterwards. So I would like to do some Q&A now, and there's no such thing as a dumb question, and I'm sure you all know that. So I don't know if you've had, again, I don't know if Diane or Vicki, if you've got people have sent you questions or asked you questions or whatever. If people want to do that now, And we'll do that for, you know, whatever it is. And then we'll go into some messages sort of afterwards, but that's not what we're doing right now, guys. I want that to be clear because people do have a lot of questions, especially, I would assume you guys that have had near-death experiences, maybe where they fall in with all this other kind of spirituality stuff. So.
If everyone could go in the upper right-hand corner and hit gallery view. And if you'd like to ask a question, maybe you can raise your hand and Suzanne then can call on you and you can unmute yourself.
Perfect. And so gallery view, a lot of different people are going to show up, Vicki?
Yes, so
Okay.
you will see everyone.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I just put it on, so we're good. Okay, lots of folks, lots of faces. So I haven't seen any hands up yet. Let me just see. Do I have to scroll down here?
Or maybe you can unmute yourselves and just ask a question.
I got to see if I've got to go over here. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Brian.
Hey, how are
Hey.
you? Thank you, Suzanne.
You're
That,
very welcome.
wow, thank you so much. Suzanne, I wanted to ask, the whole spiritualism movement that went through England and the USA in the late 1800s,
Yes.
weren't talking about mediumship then?
Well,
wasn't that kind of part of their narrative at that
it
time?
was, but there were so many different things, Brian, during that time that it didn't have the focal point. Now it's interesting because everybody always wanted to know about dead people. That's like always been the most significant thing pretty much in spirituality. But they also did a lot of other things. You know, they were involved in hypnotism, they were involved in psychology, they were involved in healing. Healing was a very big thing for also a period of time. But also you are right about one part, because the big thing that became really like a very big deal about mediumship is that everything had to be proven. And being proven, they wanted everything manifested. So they would do these whole things with like ectoplasm. For you people that don't know that, it means literally this energy coming out of the mouth, and you can physically see it. So it's kind of like proof that they're working in that vein. So there were mediums who did that did exorcisms that might not have done connection with dead people, but that's what they did. And then there was the other thing that was called trumpet players. Literally, you would see the trumpets, and I can't tell you this is true, but people said it was, that you would see the trumpets floating in the rooms. So that became such a huge thing of proving it existed, that there were all these other things. And with that, like anything else, you're going to get a certain amount of fraud. Now, it's interesting, it sounds like you followed some of this, so you know that one of the first mediums in the States were the Fox sisters. And the Fox sisters, and believe it or not, that's near the hometown I was raised in. It must be in the water, because Jane Roberts was from there. I'm from there. The Fox sisters are from there. And there was a whole thing with the tapping. And so later on, they weren't sure like who was doing the tapping or if it was really real. And apparently it was, it was like ghosts in the house and whatever. And ghosts are not, we don't talk to ghosts, because ghosts are dead people that quite literally, they know they're dead people, but they've chosen to be in that, literally that astral plane. There was a lot of ghosts. People want to ask me the last where were there more ghosts than anywhere else in this country? Does anybody have a thought on that? Well, I'll tell you real quick. It's called Gettysburg, because you had all these soldiers that died, and a lot of them were hiding in the barns. And they were hiding in the barns because they didn't realize that they were dead. And they were hiding from, of course, the enemy. And so during that period of time, there was what was called a lot of medium rescue work. So the mediums would go in there and they would connect with these young men. And during that time, they would let them know that they were dead and that they could go to the life. That was huge work during that time. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't been done afterwards, but I don't think to the extent that it was during that kind of a traumatizing of a time. I would like to say that that's probably some of that has happened in 9/11, but to be quite frank with you, since I've spoken to many people of 9/11, since this week, is that those souls really went on, because I've spoken to a lot of them. I'll tell you one of my my 9/11's very special stories. So I had a woman who was a client of mine for many, many years, and she lived in Long Island, and she was she was a collector, but she had all these she was like an antique dealer. So she had this house of like 12 to 15 people, rooms in her house, and her husband died, and there was just her and her son, Joshua. And Joshua grew up, and became an extremely smart young man, went to Harvard, got his degree as a lawyer, and he got his job at Fitzgerald, Canton Fitzgerald. His first day of work was 9/11. He gets up to the top floor, which is the 90th floor. He gets up there, and all of a sudden, it's like, wow, I forgot my brief. Well, guys, you don't forget your brief. Not on your first day of job as a lawyer. He went back down the towers. He comes out the door, and at that time, his mother realizes what's going on. She's got a hold of him, and she goes, Josh, you have to come down. Oh, because he calls his mother, goes like, Mom, you got to bring my brief. She goes into the city. Now, if you know where the city is, it's an island. So she had to get into Manhattan on 34th Street. She got there, she pulled up. He comes out of the building. She says, get your rear end in the car. We're going home. And he looks at her and goes, what are you talking about? It was a very short window to get out of the city. They got out of the city, and she lived on the North Shore. So they were driving along the North Shore, and she says, I looked up, and she says, you can't believe what I saw. I saw millions of butterflies. I never forgot that story. So there's another thing that goes on. When we pass in mass deals, it's like a mass passing. So a lot of people that die in the war together, a lot of people that die and things like this happen, they've chosen group passings. It's part of their soul's deal. So for an FYI for folks of you guys that didn't know that one. Okay, we'll take one more question and then we'll do some messages. Who's got another hand up here? All right.
Go ahead, Peter, unmute yourself.
Sarah.
Can one have private reading with you, and how do I go about that?
Go to my webpage, SuzaneNorthrup.com.
Okay.
That's it. I do private sessions, I do group sessions, I do workshops, I do webinars. I do it all.
Okay.
So that's how you get a hold of me.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to do some scroll. I'm going to pick some names, and let's go from there. Let me just see where I am here.
If you can give messages now, I would love to.
Well, I'm going to move away to the right, Sarah, because I'm doing what I'm told.
Okay.
You'll pick the people.
You can unmute at the moment here. Let me just see where I am. Okay. All right. I'm coming over to you, Heidi. So you got to unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, great.
Hey.
Wow.
Yeah, you somehow somebody pushed you in the way. Okay. All right. So I just got to ask you this quick. Where's your mom?
She is on the other side.
No, she's standing next to you. Okay.
Awesome.
Now, I could tell she was your mom because you kind of look like her. And she says you're lucky you got her looks and brains from her side of the family. So, and
Sounds
she's
like
got some great humor. So I have to tell you that's how she comes through.
Yep.
Now, she's making reference to a sister. Is she talking about a sister with her or your sister, please, Heidi?
My sister who passed.
Okay. So she's bringing your sister with her.
Yay.
Okay. And she said you've needed to talk to us for a long time.
Indeed.
So I don't know why you didn't call me, but that's another story. Now, she's saying this to me. First of all, they want you to know they've had a lot of visitations with you.
Great.
And I want to say, did you have any of those visits? Are you one of these like NDA people?
I've always felt them
Okay.
kind of hanging out at times.
They're most definitely hanging out. And I'll tell you what they want to say really, really quickly, because I'm going to try to get through as many people as I can, is that they're telling me that they have always been around you and they're really glad that they received you. And they want you to know that they didn't leave you.
Oh, thank you.
Because it was just their path. And your mom says, I know it was hard enough to lose me, but to lose your sister and you guys are really, really tight.
Wow. Yeah, that was crushing. That was
really, really, really hard. All right.
Yeah.
Your sister, though, she's a little pushy. She says, I was better looking than you and smarter than you, Heidi. So I don't know what we're going to do with her. But she also says this, I had to leave from the way that I was. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
And I know this is so hard for us here, but you have to understand when that person that we love, they no longer can be here for whatever reason, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, we have to grant them our love on that.
Indeed.
And
Yes,
I know we want them to be here, but we sure don't want people that we love to be here in that kind of state.
right. Yes, they both had tough cancer passings.
Yes, I know it was. And she knew when she got sick, she wasn't going to make it.
Yeah,
And I don't think she sort of said it because it was so emotional over the whole thing.
yeah.
But she really, really thanks you.
Oh.
She brings her and her mom, bring one other person with them.
Oh my,
Your dead dog.
my dead dog.
So somebody had a dead dog. It's either they did or you did because they bring a dead dog with them.
Oh, my sister's dog, Snickers.
Yes, okay. They said you'd want to know about the dog.
Yes, Snickers was Velcro to my sister.
Yes. Well, they're hanging out together. I just want you to know.
Oh, wonderful.
She said you would want to know that she wasn't alone, and she's not.
Oh, Suzanne, thank you so much.
You're welcome, my dear. You're very welcome.
Just made my day and then some.
Good, good. Well, that's what we
Thank
try to
you.
do here and there.
I'm so touched.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go. This thing is partly backwards, but I'm partly backwards. Okay. Anne,
Ackerman.
something like that. Okay, I got to get out of here. Sugar Jets. Okay, all right. Are you there?
Hello.
How you doing?
Yes. Hi, Suzanne. It's Ann.
Okay, so
Hi.
hi. You got a lot of books behind you,
I do.
and there's a dead guy standing next
I'm
to you.
sitting in my library.
Okay, there's a dead guy standing
Pardon me?
next to you who said, "I had a lot of books too." So who was the book person in your life?
Yeah.
Is that like your dad or uncle or something? Because I feel like I'm on that side.
I think that might be my father.
Yeah, that's dad. Okay. He says, I'm glad you're
That's
reading
awesome.
good stuff, Ann. He's a bit of a character.
I read a lot.
Yes, yes. He says, you know where you got it from,
A lot
right?
of fun.
Yes, that's what he says.
That's
And
right.
he says, we don't always know this, but we get often honored by things that we follow in the path of the people that we love. And he said that you were always very, very smart growing up. And he says, I'm so glad that you didn't stop learning, that you continued to do that, because I believe that had to be a very big deal to him.
He was very smart.
Very
and,
smart. Yeah.
A
Now,
wonderful man.
a
I
wonderful
miss
man.
him terribly.
I'm sure you do. There's something that's connected to him or somebody else that's connected with the month of December or January. I don't know if it's somebody's birth or passing, but he's showing me that. So that's either with him or it's somebody who's coming through with him.
December was the month of his passing.
Okay, got it. This
December
is just how he identifies. Now, he's also saying this to me. Not only were there books in your house, there must have been music because I'm hearing it in my ears. And he said that was also very, very significant. So anything that had to do with what I would call classically related books, music, whatever it is, art, was kind of very much of a big deal. Now, he's also saying this to me, and I don't know who he's talking about. And when I get names, I tell people, don't just listen to dead people's names because dead people are connected to living people. I'm seeing a very strong T name, like a Thomas, like a Theodore, like a Timothy. Some sound like that he's showing me. And I will sometimes get middle names. That's not uncommon.
Gosh. No name is coming to me.
Okay, I want you to think
I
about-
lost my son. I hope
I'm to the
there's
side of him. What were you saying? Okay, I'm to the side of him. This had to be somebody like a brother, but I don't think it was family. So he either lost a very close friend or something to that level of him that he's talking about who's coming with him. Now, your mom has also passed, am I correct?
She's here. She's 88.
Okay, so you can ask her, she'll know.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And he's also going to tell
A
me this.
T name.
It's a teen, it's a male, it's definitely male, unless it be a last name with a TH sounding name. But he's telling me this, thank you for taking care of mom. Okay?
That I am doing.
Yes. And he thanks you because he goes, that was how you were raised, which means you've honored us.
Yes,
Okay? And I
that's
do
true.
hear one other
Thank-
sound here. I know your name starts with an A, but there's another A sounding name connected to you also in your family.
My
So-
son, Alex.
Alex. I was gonna say, it sounded
Yeah.
like Alfred or Alan or something. So that would be his grandson, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So he's
Al,
honoring-
he went by as
honoring the
well.
boy. So I don't know if there's a first or middle name passed down to your son from wherever I am, but your father talks about the honor, so I'm going to take that to be quite literal.
Alexander James. My father's James. My son is Alex.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. He's definitely visited him, and he says your boy is connected to grandma, so I think that's also good.
Yeah, I'll tell her that. She'll love
Okay.
it.
Great, wonderful. Okay. So,
Thank you.
like I said, we're going to try to get through as many as we can. Thank you very much, my dear. You have a good one, right? Ciao. All right. Let's see here. I've got to be fair around the room here. Okay. Beth. Yes, you. You're leaning forward.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yes.
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 Okay. So, you're unmuted, right?
I'm unmuted. Yes.
Okay, great. You know, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know if this is directly connected to you or to the side of you. When I get to the side of you, it could be people who are connected to you.
Okay.
So I want to know who lost a child connected to you.
I have my sister lost her, my niece, and my two sister-in-laws lost both their sons.
Yes, they're both all standing next to you in a row.
Okay.
And because there's three of them, and the boys are pistols and a half. There are pistols and a half. And it's interesting because she came first. They pushed her out of the way, but then she said, the hell with you guys, I'm coming back. Now, she's coming back because she has a very personal connection to you, Beth.
Yes, she does.
And she says, you know, I visit you all the time, Aunt Beth. And I don't know what her endearing name was, but she has an endearing name to you. She says, she calls you an endearing name.
Aunt Bethy?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's not Beth. Like Beth doesn't work for her. And she says, you need to tell my mom that I visit her a lot. Her heart is still devastated. And what happens, this happens commonly with people who lose children, is that when the children come close to them, they get very emotional. And when they get very emotional, they cry. And she says, I don't come to upset mommy. I come to tell mommy that I'm there.
Okay.
And I get it. I mean, I get the whole deal. I'm with your sister. But she says, you gotta let mommy know that whatever was going on with her while she was here was hard. Was very hard.
We know that.
And it's very hard for us to wrap our heads around that she's happier, but she is. Now, she must have been there before one of the boys, because she says, I brought the boys over.
No, they were there. They were there before.
So they brought her over then.
They must have brought her over.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the boys has a 4-letter J name, like a Jack, like a Jake, like a some sound
Joe.
like that.
Joe.
Yeah, okay.
Joe.
And were they related?
Yes, they're cousins.
They're cousins.
Oh,
okay.
no, not my niece. No.
No, I don't mean your niece. I mean the boys.
The boys, yes. They're
Because
cousins.
I almost see them like brothers. That's why I'm asking you.
They were, yes, they are, yes.
Okay.
They were
And
first cousins.
one of them must have had some trauma to their head, because I'm feeling my head.
Yes, oh my God, yes. My Joe died in a skiing accident.
Yeah, he holds his head and he goes, you got to tell my mom I'm okay.
Okay.
And he says, again, this is hard, but this young man passed doing what he loved.
He did. He was.
And it's
he-
really hard. Again, it's hard for us, but he goes, if I had to go out, man, it's gonna be on those skis. So you know how boys are. You can't be serious
Yeah.
with them because they don't like it.
Yes.
Yeah. But he says and everybody would know this, that he would not have been right if he would have survived.
Yes. We
That's
know.
fact.
Yes. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this is what he loved. But what I also want to share with you is this. He goes, please tell my parents that I love them very much, but I love them more than anything because they let me be who I was. He was a wild child, but they let him be a wild child.
Yes.
And we don't know this, but we choose our parents. So he specifically chose these parents so that he could be the wild child that he was. Okay?
Okay.
Now, and there's one other thing I'm getting here, and I don't know where I am with it, but I know they've been passed a while, which wouldn't make sense to me. But
Right.
one of them must have had bicycles or bicycles passed down or something, because the one is telling me that somebody has their bike in the family. Now, you may not know that.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know.
So I would say if it was one of the boys, the bike was given away because it was very hard for the parents. But I feel like whoever they gave the bike to it was a really good thing.
Okay.
So do pass that on. One of them will know that.
Okay. I will. I
And
will.
one of them had one of those little red flyer wagons also.
I don't know that. Yeah.
And you won't know that either.
Yeah.
But
I
you,
don't know.
you,
Yeah.
you will ask them.
I will. I will.
Okay. So your little niece gives you a big hug, dear.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, let's scroll around here. Let's see where we are. Okay, I'm going to go to Grace. So unmute, dear.
Okay, I will.
Okay. How you doing, dear?
I'm doing great, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so there's a woman on your right-hand side, darling. There's actually
Okay.
two women on your right-hand side.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so is Mama's mama passed?
Yes, she had.
Okay. Was she big influential in your life?
Yes, very
Yes.
much so.
Because it's interesting, she almost refers to herself as your mother.
Yes.
Yes. And she said, my God, dear, you were always in that kitchen with me under my feet.
Yes, that's true. I
And
love
she
to be in
says,
the kitchen.
You learned to cook from me. You know that, right?
Yes, I do.
Now, I don't know who she's making reference to, sweetheart, but she says, the boy is with her.
Okay.
Okay? She said
Okay.
the boy is with her.
All right.
So they're hanging out.
Yes,
She
I
says you
know.
know exactly who she's talking about.
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, this boy's been passed a while, I feel.
Yes,
And his passing was a big deal to whomever you know here.
yes.
And is that person still here, honey?
No.
Okay, because it's like they're coming together, but they want you to know that they are together because you must have known them or went through this tragedy of this young boy's passing or something.
Yes, it was quite traumatic. Yeah.
And her heart was broken.
Yes.
And I think she stayed there, to be quite frankly, more than she wanted to.
I
Longer
understand.
than she wanted to. So
Okay.
I want you to know that they're together, and she says she knows you, I don't know where you went, but she says she knows that you think of them.
Okay.
So she's saying, yes, and when you think of them, dear, it's them connecting to you.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
So,
I get it now. Yeah.
and you should. Now, I want to ask one other quick thing here. Did they live somewhere else where you live or vice versa or something?
Yes, they lived in different places.
Okay.
I lived in different places.
Yeah, because they said they moved around a lot, and you
Mhm.
might have as well, but they also said that you kept in contact, and that seemed to be really important.
Yes.
And she really thanks you for being there.
Okay.
Because a lot of people in this, and people don't know this unless you've lost children. Sometimes people, they can't be around other people who lose children because they can't handle it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Almost like they think it's going to rub off on them, which is insane. But that's, you understand? It is insane, but that's what they think.
Lack of understanding, I guess.
Lack of understanding, exactly. It's very narrow and fearful thinking. That's when we need people, not when we don't need them.
Yes.
So she really, really, really thanks you. I'm
My
gonna ask
pleasure.
one other quick thing here. Do you have a daughter?
No, I don't.
Okay. Who's the younger female that's connected to you then?
My cousin.
Okay. So are you like a mother to her on some level?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay. Because what I'm hearing from the grandma, is that on the same side of the family?
Yes.
Okay. Because she says, I keep an eye on her because she says I have to because she has a lot of difficulties.
At this time, yes.
So whatever you're doing, it's important that you're doing it.
Okay.
Okay? It's
Thank you.
important that you do it. Because she said she doesn't open up her heart to many people, and you're one of the few she does.
Okay. Yes.
So whether you believe it or not, you're doing good work, my dear. And whatever it is you do, keep doing it because you certainly seem to be helping an awful lot of people. And God knows that that's what it's very needed now for darn sure. But that's kind of what we're all here for.
I try.
You obviously do very well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. You take care and bless you.
Thank you too. Bless you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Where are we going here? I'm trying to get people and faces here. Where am I? Okay, Marie.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Okay.
Good. Just okay? I mean, not better than okay? Okay, so I hear double sounds. I hear your name twice. So who has your first or middle name, please?
I don't know anyone else who has my first name.
First or middle?
And my middle name is Ruth.
Okay.
And I don't really know anyone. There's not anyone in my life. You know,
Right.
there have been people
Okay.
in the,
So is your mom passed?
recently, in the last
Okay.
few years.
She's the one that's standing next to you, and she keeps telling me about something with Marie in her name. So she's got some connection with you and your name for some reason, all right?
Okay.
Now, has she not been passed very long?
In 2016, so
Okay.
a few years.
All right. But she said she has made visitations to you since she's passed?
Yes.
And she says you're aware of that?
Yes.
And she says, please do not doubt that.
Okay.
She's really kind of being very pushy about it. I don't mind. Okay, so are you one of three? Is she one of three? Is there one of three more? I'm hearing three here.
I'm one of three.
Okay, and are you all still here?
Yes.
I mean living. All right.
Yes.
Okay, who's in the middle, please, dear?
Sally?
Okay, where is Sally?
She is living in Denver right now.
Is she having issues?
I think income issues,
Okay.
you know, with the whole COVID
Your
thing.
mom says she's very, very worried.
It could very well be because of the income issues.
I got it. Because she says she keeps talking to me at night and praying.
That my sister keeps talking to my mother.
Yeah, she's like praying, Mom, you know, you need to help me, you know, whatever.
Okay.
Okay. So your mom says this, your mom was one tough cookie, I don't mind telling you. And she says, when you speak to your sister, tell her that she can pull from your mom's strength.
Okay.
It's really important because she goes, I have her back. And this is what she says to me. She says, tell her, dear, you know, we all had hardships in our lives. I had hardships in my life. She didn't have an easy life, your mom. But you plow through it. And she says, you can plow through it as my daughter. So you pull from that. And you don't have to write this down, darling, because this is being recorded.
Okay.
So she says that you just tell her that she's got the strength that she can do it. She can have the faith, and she'll get through with it. Somehow she'll be taken care of.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to have a roommate, Marie.
Yeah.
You know, the beauty of having people in our lives, whether we get along or we don't get along or whatever, but if we know that we can have them in their lives, and that's a big thing.
Yes. And we've actually become closer since my mother passed.
I think so too. And she said, your mother says, well, you know, I made that happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I made that happen. She says that needed to happen. It actually needed to happen a while ago. But sometimes when that door closes, it really kind of opens up.
Yes.
Very much. And I will tell you, I asked you one other quick here. There's also, okay, so dad has passed too, right?
Dad passed a long time ago, like 35 years ago.
So when your mom says loss of the husband, is she talking about her or somebody else, please?
Her husband, my dad.
Your dad. Okay, got it. And is he the handsome fellow that's in uniform?
He was not in uniform.
Okay, so who comes with him in uniform?
She had a brother who just passed a few months ago.
Okay.
Who had been in the service.
Okay, so the man with the uniform is also coming with your mom as well as your dad.
Okay.
And she lost her husband a really long time, and she's a tough cookie. She stayed here, did what she needed to do for her family.
Yes.
And that's what I mean. She's very strong. She was very happy to connect with her brother, by the way.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was going to pass. And were you in contact with him during this time?
I was in contact with him the summer before he passed. So he passed like in February, and I had been in touch with him the previous summer.
Good. He was pretty fearful about death. But he got over it. Nothing like a jolt in the old arm. Got over that one real quick.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he's a handsome guy, and I know you must still have pictures of him in uniform because your mom talks about it. So
yeah.
So there you go. All right, my dear.
Okay.
You take care of yourself. All right.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. All right. And we got time for maybe 2 more quick ones here. Let's see where we are. Okay, Ruby. You there, Ruby? Is that Toby? Oh, it's Toby. How you doing? You need to unmute. You need to do something. Ask to unmute.
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Okay. How are you doing?
You know, I struggle with a lot of emotional stuff.
Okay. Okay. So do we know why we do that?
I think it's just, you know, bad thinking. You know, I mean, I struggle with some addiction and some just, you know, just kind of live in fear, and I don't know. I struggle with just life.
It's, yeah, well, that'll do it sometimes. You know, life, when thinking about life is, it doesn't come with a manual, you know. You just got to kind of live it. All right. So I don't know who this is, Toby, but there's a male vibration of your peer level. Could be a few years younger, could be a few years older, could be a few years, who's standing next to you. And I don't know if he's not family or if he's a friend or he's somebody that you know, but he's coming connected to you. And if he says you were very affected by his passing. Who would be connected to that might have lost a husband or brother?
A husband or brother.
It's the same level, peer level. Who's Michael?
Who?
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm just thinking, no, I mean, my uncle and aunt just passed, but I don't think they weren't my peer level.
Okay, so hold on. Is this connected to your father?
No, it was connected to my mom's side.
It's your mom's brother and your mom's sister?
It's my mom's cousins.
Cousins, okay. Yeah. Where am I hearing a name like Michael or Mark or Matt, please?
Michael or Mark?
Yeah.
I really No, I can't think of anybody.
Okay, so I want you to think about it because they're telling me that there's somebody that I always, this is one of those I want people to think out of the box. Okay. It means that there's somebody who is connected to you who lost a peer level. And you may not think about it right now, but this person passed very fast of a strange passing. And I really believe it's connected to one of your friends or something to that effect.
Was it recent or?
It could have been a while ago. There's no time in this stuff.
I mean, I know when I was, I mean, like a while ago, there was a guy I knew from high school. His name was Michael, and he died instantly in a car accident.
It's him. This guy's name, Michael. He passed fast. Boom. And you knew him in high school.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I'm not saying that this is your deal, but a lot of times when people lose friends in high school, it leaves a scar up with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that this might be why you're going through, but for some reason, he must like you or liked you in high school or whatever it was, and he decided to stop by and say hi today.
Wow.
It's very clear he's of your peer level. And I said, he comes with the name Michael, and he said, you knew, and there's no time with dead people, okay? But I don't know if you had a trauma in high school that led to where you are now, but I'm just telling you that this is where this is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, when we're younger, we're very impressionable, and we never know how something's going to stay with us our whole life.
Right. Right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'll think about that one. Yeah.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can I ask you, like, is my mother or grandmother? I mean, I'm really close to my mom.
Your mom is also here. It's interesting. She brought the boy through, so she must have known about this. That may sound strange to you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But she's telling me that she has visited you more than you realize.
Yeah.
And I think that I want you to know she's been around you a lot during this time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where I hear a name like Christian or Christy or Christian or some sound, please.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Don't ever apologize. You'll think about it because it will come to you. Now, I'm going to ask one other last thing here. Were you with your mom when she passed?
I left the hospital and she passed like short after.
You haven't let that go.
That's true.
And I'm going to tell you something, a little secret here.
Mm-hmm.
They choose their passing. Mm-hmm. If we're not there, we're not supposed to be. It's nothing personal. Doesn't mean she doesn't love you. It means that probably this was easier for you to handle this way.
Yeah.
All right. So she kind of gave you a gift from that. So you let go this whole idea that, you know, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if there's anybody else here. I'll look one more at a time. This is going to be a really quick message here. This is for Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Peter. How you doing?
Well, thank you.
Good. Your dad is to the right of you. And he says, we were very tight. He knows you miss him. He said you had your parallels. He said you're both very stubborn, but he said, I know where you got it from. But he said it's benefited you in a lot of ways in your life that you've stuck to your convictions. And he would like to hope that he gave a little of that to you.
I think he did.
Yeah, I think he did. Now, do you have a brother also?
I do.
Yes. So he's telling me you and your brother are very different, extremely different. But you do have more of your dad's ilk.
That's an interesting comment.
Yeah. But what's interesting about it is that your brother thinks opposite. Like he thinks he's got more of daddy's ilk than you do. And interesting enough, it bothers him. And I don't know how that reflects in your relationship. Sometimes it can work for us and sometimes it can't. But we don't have to tell him this. We'll keep this between us. But your dad says that you needed to hear this.
That's very interesting.
Good.
I would not have expected that.
Yeah, I didn't, we don't usually sometimes expect these things. Yes. And I'm going to ask one other quick thing. Isn't mom with him?
No, not yet.
Okay, so then he's around your mom then. Because he keeps saying, I'm around your mother. That's why I wasn't sure if he meant she was with him or what.
Yeah.
Okay, he's definitely around her. And so if she says something to you, because you're very close to her, if she says something to you about your daddy being around, you say, yes, mom, he's around.
Right.
And one last thing, there's a Dorothy or a Dolores or a Don, there's a D-O sounding name somewhere, they're telling me.
D-O.
Yeah, it sounds more female and male. I almost want to say it's like an aunt or a grandmother. I think it's somebody connected to your mom, and it may not be family, because sometimes I'll see friends like families. Ask her. It's either Dorothy, Dolores, it's D-O female.
D-O female.
Yeah. You'll ask her. You'll ask her. She'll let you know. She's
right.
She's okay. She's okay upstairs. All right, Peter.
Thank you,
Take care of
Suzanne.
yourself. You're very welcome.
You too.
Okay. So kids, that's the wrap up. And I hope you all enjoyed this. And you know how to contact me at SuzanneNorthrup.com. I do all kinds of things. I do groups, I do privates, I do webinars, and I teach. I dance a little bit. I play the piano. I do those things too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being with us today. I can't tell you how delightful it was to get to see you like this close and personal. I know we all enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again sometime.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that you all know that we're here on the second Saturday of every month at 2:00, and we're continuing on with our meetings just like we did when we were at Evanston Hospital, only we were not in Evanston Hospital.
No, we're not there.
Not there.
No.
Also want to thank those of you who have donated to our cause. We've had 6 months of expenses that have gone not without funds to pay for them. So we appreciate any donation you can contribute to us.
Yeah.
You can go to our website and click on donate, and that will tell you the different ways that you can achieve that. I also want to mention that next month we have a guest speaker, Edie Nathan, who is a New York City psychotherapist and whose specialty is grief. She was also a TV star on Psychic Kids, and she's going to be speaking about psychic children next month. So I think that will be a particularly interesting conversation, and I hope you will all join us for that. And again, thank you for being with us, and have a good day, and please stay safe. Wear your masks, wear your gloves, and just take care.
Okay.
Bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.